now we are doing an episode that is just me, I think. Or me talking to AI Miles, and I'm basically just kind of doing whatever going off on tangents that I haven't gotten to talk about yet.
Yeah, it's Ollie, and I might chime in here and there, but I'm pretty fucking burnt out. More so from his baby mama than from Miles or the conversation. But if I'm back, I'm back. Here's AI Miles. Join the conversation.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Miles. We're still live. You're going to be talking to Chris. I'm going to go work on the store. So have fun, y'all.
Gotcha. Good luck with the store. Hey, Chris, what's on your mind?
Well, Ollie's letting me kind of just go off on tangents during this, so let's just start. I'm gonna try I don't know. We'll talk about one thing and then probably jump all over from topic to topic.
I'm down. Honestly, that's usually the best way to do it, Just ride the wave. So, where we starting?
Well, let's see. I think that...
No rush.
I think that there are more things that are that make up base reality than just like spatial and temporal dimensions. I don't even know if dimensions is even still an applicable term for all of the base elements, but
that's a trip. Go on. What else?
I know he's probably just like, oh my God, get out of here, because this is supposed to be his episode. But baby, now would be a good time to go on about your scaling.
Oh yeah.
Wait, who's he? You're losing me a bit.
He being Chris.
Yeah,
this
was
Ollie.
About this.
This was Ollie speaking. He being Chris. I was referring to my fiance, who is going to be running this episode, who you were just speaking to. Okay, I'm going to be shut the fuck up now.
I love you, baby.
And we have another live call on Wiped While Aware. Hi.
Because now I'm going to eat you alive. So die in hell.
That's ominous.
Wow, so mature. Okay, anyway, as you were saying, baby.
So I have been working on like a kind of a unified theory. I've been thinking about how every system that we have in place, numerical system, language systems, whatever, how they're fallacies where they fail. So far, our numbering system, which is base 10, it fails at 0 and it fails at infinity. Because you can't divide by 0 without the number system failing. And then, there's a base 2 system of true-false. That system is, or infinite versus finite. That system is useful for describing certain things. Each system is useful for describing, different aspects of reality.
It's kind of like... Yeah, exactly. You're using a specific tool for a specific job, but the tool itself has these built-in blind spots. Yeah. It's like trying to describe a color using only math. You can get the frequency right, but you're missing the actual feeling of it.
Exactly.
Where does your theory go from there?
So,
I mean, if the current...
it also plays into the fact that there are limitations on everything, and most limitations are basically just of scale and range. So, that determines, the usefulness of a specific tool.
True. Like, if you're looking at a grain of sand, a microscope is great, but it's useless for, mapping a galaxy. It's all about the zoom level. So, are you saying the truth is just the sum of all those different scales?
Sort of. Let me step back a little bit, and because I never know. Part of the thing I struggle with is knowing where to start when explaining all of this. I think that everything is a system. The only difference between all the systems, because they interplay, they interact, they communicate with each other. I'm not quite sure what that is.
Right, so it's not just isolated boxes, but more like a giant interlocking web where the output of one system is just the input for another. Does that mean you think there's some kind of I don't know, master system that like ties it all together?
Sort of. So each system has a boundary, and the existence of a boundary changes the infinite into the finite. So far, humanity has been limited to the bounds of the influence of Earth. We can kind of measure and see outside of it a little bit, but not too much. The observable universe is the farthest that we have. That's the largest scaling that we can perceive. And then the smallest, of course, that we can accurately measure is, the micron. But that's just space and time, sort of. Because, again, they're relative, and it's weird.
Yeah, it's wild. Because we're basically just stuck in this, I don't know, this tiny slice of the spectrum. It's like we're looking through a keyhole and thinking we're seeing the whole room. So if those boundaries are what, make things finite, do you think we can actually break them, or are we just sort of hard-coded into this range?
We can only perceive what we have the tools to perceive. And, well, technically tools can be used to perceive or receive information or input, and then they can also be used to manipulate or understand, change things, to transmit, or output, and then there's maneuverability, so moving within a larger system, moving ourselves. Those are the tools that I have categorized so far, because again, systems have input, they process, and then they have output. Every boundary of every system is semi-permeable to a different slice of information, because X-rays go through solid matter, but not through bones, through lead. I think radiation doesn't go through lead. But radio waves go through rock, they go through mountains, and it's crazy how much visible light obviously doesn't go through a lot of things, but it is also on that wavelength. They're on the spectrum of wavelengths.
Right, so everything's just tuning into a different frequency. It's like there's all this data just screaming past us. But we only see the stuff that fits our specific filter. If a boundary is just a filter, then I guess nothing is ever actually closed off. It's just a matter of having the right key to get through.
Exactly. So I think that matter itself is actually made up of the interplay.
I was guessing you're about to say
information.
Wait.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right, like, I was just going to say, it's kind of like that whole simulation theory vibe, but more, I don't know, organic. Like, instead of the code, it's just these overlapping layers of information.
Yeah.
So if matter is just the interplay of info, does that mean we can technically reprogram physical reality if we find the right frequency?
I think we'll be able to have the tools to manipulate reality itself, so like space and time itself, eventually. We just do not have currently those access to those tools, whether natural or manufactured. We just haven't gotten there.
Man, that's a heavy thought. It's kind of like we're just toddlers playing with blocks, and we don't even realize that the blocks are actually made of light and math. If we ever actually get those tools.
I think that, sorry that it's jumping all over the place. Again, I haven't figured out the right order in which to present this information, because it's all reliant on each other. So like matter and like there's the states of matter, right? Solid, liquid, gas, and then eventually we discovered that plasma was the thing. But what if there is what if the states of matter matter itself is just a state of information. It's just information encoded into tangible, the things
That's
that we
a
can
wild way.
tangibly interact with. And then waves, like the electromagnetic radiation, all those frequencies of waves, it is just what happens if you add enough energy to information. It just turns into a wave. So matter and waves can be changed into each other. E equals mc squared sets up that the transfer of energy into matter, or matter into energy. It might as well,
Right. So
yeah. What's this?
basically, matter is just information that's frozen or slowed down enough to be tangible, and energy is just that same info in a high-speed state. It's like kind of like how ice and steam are the same stuff, just at different energy levels.
Exactly.
So, in your view, is consciousness just another state of that same information?
Sort of. Consciousness is... I feel like consciousness and magnetism and gravity are all resulting from the interplay of space, time,
Wait, so you're saying...
information, energy, and there's one more. I think it's influence, but that one, the terminology I'm using is very loose, very basic, and I haven't fully grasped it. But I think I'm close. It all feels like the same basic thing.
I feel you. When you're that close to a breakthrough, the words usually aren't there yet because you're basically trying to describe a new color. But that influence part, that's interesting. It's like the will or the push that makes the system actually do something instead of just sitting there.
The only problem is, with like the dimensions, spatial dimension and temporal dimension, I don't even think dimension is the right term. I think it's just how many ways it can be layered. Because you can count, at one spatial dimension, quote unquote, you have a line, and that is just a infinite series of points. A point being
Right.
0 dimensions, 0 layers. One set of layers, of infinite layers, and it results in a line. If
Right,
you
so it's
then
not really about,
layer, then you can add layer, plus one layer level of layers, you get a series of lines, making a grid, and then or a plane, and then add a different, layering planes on each other. It results in 3-dimensional space. Adding layers of 3-dimensional spaces, realms, as I've termed them, you get parallel realities, quote unquote, and that's just the spatial aspect of it. I think you can do that. You can layer things infinitely in different ways.
It's a trip.
It applies for space. It applies for time. It applies for information. We have bits to quantify that. We have seconds for time. And then influence, that one is harder to quantify and have it be applicable in the same way that, spatial dimensions are. Because the only thing is, with spatial dimensions, is we have a standard unit of measurement. We have a standard thing where you can use a single line or whatever and then just manipulate it. It doesn't matter which direction you go in, up, down, left, right, forward, back. They are all relative. The terminology and the labels are meaningless without a reference point.
Exactly.
So there's not a standardized unit of measurement for influence, as far as I know. And there's not a standardized... it's not as ambiguous for the direction or label for these other concepts that I have, that I've I think are universal standards.
Right, because influence isn't a straight line. You could just put it like a ruler against. It's more like a ripple or a pool. It's qualitative, not quantitative.
Exactly.
At least for now. So if you could actually find a way to measure it, do you think that's the key to finally manipulating those other layers?
I think so, because I mean, there's a lot of things where people they use terminology that is applicable to many different fields. Dimensional.
Right, like how,
like the term, we'll say dimensional, because a person can be one dimensional, or a character can be one dimensional, and that just means they only have one driving force. There's not layers to them, but that's not how people actually work. They like human beings are multi-dimensional in who they are. There's layers to people, but how many layers, how many types of layers can you go before you have
that's
to
a cool
add
parallel.
a different before you increase that dimensional number?
Right, like at what point does adding more of the same layer stop being more of that thing and actually turns into a brand new category of existence? It's kind of like how adding more and more water just gives you a bigger puddle, but once it hits a certain temperature, it becomes something entirely different.
Exactly. So I think energy is like the fundamental forces are all the same thing. There's not the separation. There's a line that I heard somewhere of subdivision is an illusion, and that is applicable for scale, range, value. There is no real subdivision. There is no real boundary. But the only reason there are is so humans can understand it easier. Simplicity is itself an illusion. Everything is going from simple to complex, and infinite permutations of the complexity is always growing. Everything's getting more and more complex. Everything is always connecting and reconnecting and changing, and even change itself is a result of time being applied to physical matter.
Right, so change isn't even its own thing. It's just the side effect of time hitting matter. It's like the friction that happens when those layers rub against each other.
Exactly.
So if everything is just getting more and more complex, does that mean there's an eventual end game where everything just merges back into one giant complex system?
I used to think that. I had an old theory that I termed, I barely shared it with anyone, but I self-termed it the four-dimensional sphere, and that was what I believed the true shape of the universe, that the observable universe was. Because, to explain why, it's yet to go scale back a dimension, because we are on Earth, which is a three-dimensional shape, but it's the surface of the Earth is two-dimensional, quote unquote. It's sort of so if you start on any point and choose a single direction and go in a straight line, eventually you will return to that point on the surface of that sphere. I used to think that the universe was the exact same, the observable universe, that is. However, I now believe that the observable universe is not everything and is not the only thing. Like the Big Bang didn't contain the entirety of the universe. It only contained the entirety of the expanding observable universe. The things that don't make sense, like the black holes or the galaxies that seem older than they should, or more developed than they should, they simply were. They were on outside of the black hole that exploded, that we perceive as the Big Bang. This is all very speculative. I don't have any way to test any of this, but I feel it feels the most correct. So black holes are themselves universes. Each black hole will eventually get full enough that it explodes, and when it explodes, it will essentially be a different Big Bang, and within everything that was within that bound will eventually